What's up, guys? All right, today we're gonna go over different types of growth patterns on horses. It's a great example right here. We've got two horses that grow completely different from each other in terms of length versus depth, and this is a perfect example. And I'm gonna walk you through the trims on both of them on how to conserve the bottom of the foot on a horse that grows length or a horse that traditionally grows toey versus a horse that grows with depth and doesn't grow as toey. So if you come on in, we're going to get a nice little side profile view on both of these horses, both these warm blood style horses. This right here, this horse is a perfect example of a horse that grows depth. It's a phenomenal hoof capsule. He grows just beautiful angles from the start to the finish of the cycle. When I reference depth, I'm talking about from the hairline to the ground right here. So this horse's both heel and toe grow just same rate, nicely up, and gives beautiful depth and separation of the coffin bone from the ground. So from here to here is depth. This is the desired growth in my eyes. This is the horse that will probably stay the soundest, the longest, and have the fewest issues, simply because the foot accompanies the limb much better. These horses are both due, and you can see an angle difference. This pastern coming into the hoof capsule is still a beautiful angle. We reference that as the hoof pastern axis angle, HP angle. That is, he's due, and it's still almost perfect. So now we'll go over to the other horse over here, where we have the exact opposite growth pattern. Now, in my eyes, I'm not going to say one's more desirable than the other because they're both appropriate for what the horse is doing. There's just benefits to one that grows more depth than length. Right off the bat, you can see this horse has a different angle of his hoof to his pastern. So this is a horse that grows length, not depth. Length is from here to here, not here to here. Depth, length. And so when you get a horse that grows toey, sometimes those horses need to be shod more frequently. That horse over there, not so much. This horse, he gets long, low, quicker than that horse over there. So I'm going to go through the two different styles of trim and how to accommodate this foot to this pastern and that foot to that pastern with a completely different trim style. But knowing how these horses start when they're due right now, meaning before I've trimmed, and the differences of how I run my nippers and rasps to achieve the appropriate angle while preserving depth in these feet. So we'll show that to you here in just a minute. All right, so we're back on the horse that grows a lot of depth. And this is like a shoer's dream right here because you can take foot from the bottom and it's just naturally going to trim out easy and simple. So he measures just over 4 inches. He's ready to be shod. So most of my trimming will happen on the bottom of this foot because that's where the growth pattern goes. Very little collection, as I call it, needs to happen on this horse to attain a nicely trimmed foot. And see, even at 6 weeks or 7 weeks, whatever this horse is at, he measures quite long, but he still looks very good in terms of angles and how he has continued to grow. So you can see I take a fair amount of toe from the bottom with my nippers. On horses like this, they naturally have a lot of concavity in their feet. Concavity meaning down here at the apex of the frog, if you were to lay your rasp across the top, there's a nice gap right there at the apex of the frog. That's beautiful concavity translated into depth. I do want to even out this hoof wall thickness. Right here is your truest hoof wall thickness on your foot. So if you want to match that all the way around, that gives you your most or your best represented hoof capsule to the coffin bone. And just like that, this horse is trimmed, taking nothing but depth. Now we'll go to the other guy. All right, now we're back on the horse that grows length more than depth. Okay, so as we can see right now from the bottom, this frog's kind of large, protruding out from the foot. This horse, to me, looks like he suffers from somewhat of a negative palmar angle or a very flat palmar angle, which is how he grows or why he grows length instead of depth. So that horse over there measured 4 1/8. This horse measures 4 inches. So very similar. You see back here how it looks like the wall is weakened. It's almost like there's little hairs sticking out. So this foot is begging for heel elevation. And my interpretation of that is the reason there's no weight bearing on this. So when I say heel elevation, I mean there's not as much weight bearing on these heels during that stride phase and landing as there is on this toe. So these are weakened somewhat and stressed. So he's begging for his toe to be shortened up. So not so much the heels. So on this foot, my style of trim is actually going to be majority with my rasp. Remove some of the protruding bars. I'm going to be very conservative on my sole surface. As you see right here, we already have a somewhat of a cup right there, and then it comes back up to the frog. That tells me that this portion of the sole is very thin. So I want to conserve as much of that as possible. So just take a very tiny bit off there, right there. And now from here, I'm going to go around and use my rasp to collect up that foot before I take any from the bottom. Because once I take it from the bottom, it's very difficult to put it back on. Now from here, I do want to take a little bit of foot. Now this horse is only going to drop in measurement by maybe 1/8 or 3/16, but he doesn't need to be any shorter from the bottom than that. Now the big picture on this horse isn't going to come together until we have a shoe on him, and it helps balance our ratios around the center of articulation. So our center of articulation is back here on this widest part of the foot, clear back over here, and as you can see still, we have lots of toe. So you see our heels only come back behind our rasp by a little bit, but when I rotate it around, there's lots of toe there. So this horse is asking, or this foot is asking to have a large shoe put on it. So he's usually in a size 4. Sometimes I wish I had a little bit more iron on a 4. Make sure I collect up all those flares before I shape my shoe. All right, let's shape some shoes. Shape my shoe. All right, got a shoe shaped up. What we're going to be shooting for on this horse is to get our ratios of around our center of articulation balanced with our shoe selection and our fit. So as I said before with this horse, he grows a lot of length, not very much depth. So I was conservative on the bottom and I collect up the hoof capsule on this horse. So now my goal is to fit behind these heels far enough with this shoe to try and bring this foot back into balance to the joint inside. Get a nice burn as we look. We're a little full on this hoof, but I do capture my heels right there, so I need to take into consideration this foot does want more caudal support, and it's telling me that because when I came back to look at this foot, our heels were crumbly, they didn't hold a lot of structure, and then our toe was running forward out of control. So that means I didn't have enough caudal support or support underneath the bulbs. So when this foot was hitting the ground and he was loading on this particular foot, the back half would sink and the toe would somewhat elevate. And that's nature of the beast with low-heeled, long-toed horses. They do that a lot. So lots of caudal support on horses like this is typically what I find myself doing. All right, so showing the finished product on these feet right here, it'll show you just the difference of, again, length versus depth. This particular foot doesn't look like it was much done with it because we had plenty of depth to work with, so we were able to maintain the same angle from our previous shoe to now. There wasn't a whole lot of change in the foot. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel on this horse. He grows a naturally sound hoof capsule. Like I said earlier, this is a farrier's dream. Now if we go to the next horse over here, this is the horse that goes long toe, load heel. And he's not so much farrier's dream. So not as desirable of a hoof capsule on this. If you look, your angles are not perfect. They have a flatter hoof pastern or hoof angle than you do your pastern angle right there. I have yet to be able to get this horse to really marry up and get a nice clean hoof pastern angle. I bounce between a rocker toe or a rolled toe on this foot, depending on what it looks like and his workload. This time around, I elected not to, but it seems to be going well. The owner so far has come back with good reviews on his soundness and the way of going. But you can see that my heels are still shy of these bulbs, but are still supporting back behind this coffin joint that's landing right about here. So a lot of shoe on this horse. We didn't make him perfect, but it's better than he was when he was due. So we just hope to do better next time. But like I said, you can see that the difference of trims between this horse and the other horse is a great example of depth versus length. We're dealing with length on this horse. It's harder to manage these feet than it is a horse with good depth. Hopefully you learned something from that one and get something out of it. And like I said, hopefully we do better on the next round.